Hi, this is Laura Parmer-Lohan, Mayor of the City of San Carlos. I'm pleased to be here today with Kai Doran, who is leading the Menlo Atherton chapter of SafeSpace. It's a student-led mental health organization focused on prevention, education, outreach, and designed to create awareness about mental health and mental wellness for our youth. Kai, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
What does pride mean to you?
Well, I would say to me, like pride sort of operates on two separate levels. There's sort of the individual level of pride, which concerns each of our own journeys with sort of this concept and self-acceptance. And then there's also the more societal level, which concerns the broader work of our movement. I would say individual kind of refers to like choosing to accept yourself regardless of what society has to say about it, or at the very least working so that you no longer like hate yourself who you are, because obviously there's a lot of like internalized queer phobia, internalized queer or transphobia in like our community. And we all struggle with this to like different degrees depending on like sort of the culture we were raised in, our upbringing, our environments. So it's working to accept yourself regardless of what you have been taught in the past. And obviously this is something that doesn't happen overnight. For me, it's been a huge journey and it's definitely still ongoing. And I would say that this work of like learning to love yourself in a world that honestly is trying to destroy a lot of us is very, very radical and it's truly an act of revolution. And then societal is sort of the work of our larger movement, where sort of like when people think of like pride, this is what they're usually thinking of. They're thinking about like speaking out against injustice. They're thinking about contributing to the movement. They're thinking about supporting the community and joining in the fight for equality. But it can also be like the littler things, which is sort of like loving yourself and loving your community enough to fight for the future of it and rebelling in your own small way against the discrimination, against the bigotry, and whatever that looks like. And we have to keep in mind whatever is actually safe for you. And it can truly just be yourself, which is honestly revolutionary when the world wants you to be anything but that.
Well, thank you, Kai. That's very profound. The idea of self-acceptance being revolutionary and creating change for the broader community is very inspirational. Thank you for sharing that. Tell me a little bit about what draws you to the work.
For me, I've had like a very difficult journey with mental health. I've struggled with like a lot of depression. I've struggled with a lot of anxiety. I had an eating disorder. And I'm still working to overcome all of those things. I think in some part, like my gender identity has contributed a lot to my eating disorder because it's really a struggle to accept your body when you're actually trans, when you're non-binary. And I've really had to work on accepting myself and just who I am. And I was definitely raised in a more conservative household. So this is actually like talking about these issues is still difficult, even though my parents have come around since I've come out. And I just like, I've seen my friends struggle with mental health. I've seen myself struggle so much with mental health. And I see how our identities kind of play into these struggles and how if there's more acceptance, that could be changed. Like we could have struggled less. And to me, I want to start bringing about that change. I want to start bringing about that wider acceptance that goes beyond just like one club in a school, one teacher in a school, that is the whole school or the whole community accepting these individuals. And I just want to play a part in making the world a better place for whoever comes after me, because I know how much I've struggled and I don't want anyone else to have to struggle like that. Even though I know that some people will always be struggling, I'm hoping to reduce the amount of it. I'm hoping to reduce the number of people struggling. And I just really, as cheesy as it sounds, like I want to make this different for other people.
Oh, thank you, Kai. I appreciate your courage in sharing your journey with us and your willingness to give back to help others have an easier path forward. What would you like the community to know?
Well, that's a good one. There's so many things. Well, since we're sort of on the topic of mental health, I would like everyone to know that everyone has mental health, but some people have mental illness. So therefore, we all sort of have our own journeys with that, and in correlation to our identities, like how we see ourselves and our identities, and like how that sort of factors into things like our mood and our attitudes. So if you are struggling right now, and I know a lot of us are, because the pandemic has hit the queer community, the queer and trans community especially hard. It's cut us off from support. It's cut us off from like resources that we might have had at school. It's left a lot of us in like households that are difficult to live in as our identities. So therefore, I just want people to know that you're not really alone in this. You have so many other people who are in the same boat, in the same situation. It's just a question of reaching out and finding the people who are going to be on your team, who are part of your community, who understand what you're going through. And I can assure you that there's so many like resources out there if you're trying to look, if you're like willing to go look for them. And June is Pride Month. Like, I hope everyone remembers, like, you don't have to be out to be proud of yourself. You don't have to be out to love yourself. You just have to do that work of accepting yourself for who you are. And that's just such a huge part of everyone's work. And like I said earlier, this is revolutionary, like once you get to that point, because the world is discouraging you from being yourself. And if you are being yourself, then that's a huge act of defiance in a very trans, anti-queer society.
Isn't it amazing that you say that self-love is an act of defiance, and one that is so difficult for many to appreciate and take that step towards. Thank you for sharing that. What actions can the community take to support those with mental illness who are struggling on a journey towards self-acceptance?
Well, I would say it all comes down to being willing to support each other. Like, reach out to your friends during this difficult time. If you're like a straight or if you're a cis ally, like there's so much you can do to help like your friends who might not have that like straight privilege, that cis privilege. So you want to like make sure that they're doing all right. You want to offer them up resources. Like, for example, if your school has a Genders and Sexualities Alliance or a Gay Straight Alliance or anything sort of along the lines of like a LGBTQ plus specific club, that's a great resource for a lot of people. You can get connected with that. Pretty much most schools have one in this area. You can look out to like more community organizations, for example, Outlet, San Mateo Pride. They're all sort of like nearby within the range of this Bay Area. And you can and they have a lot of virtual support groups. They have a lot of like spaces that are specifically intended for queer and trans youth, especially those who are struggling. And you can seek peer support. And I would like to say to like people who have friends who are struggling, like be sure to check in on them. It can be as simple as sending them a "how are you" text and asking for an honest answer. And if they're not comfortable giving you that, trying to direct them towards resources like hotlines and like text lines that are available to people. And I hope we can post some, like a couple of those at the end of the video. And yeah, just sort of like doing some research of the resources are available, guiding people towards them. When you see something that's wrong, speak out against it if it's safe for you to do so. And that can mean so much to your friends who are struggling. That can mean so much to like people in the queer and trans community if they can see an ally who is stepping up for them.
Great. Thank you so much, Kai. And how would somebody get in touch with SafeSpace if they wanted to participate in your organization?
Yeah, so we actually have a website. Just Google SafeSpace, and it should be one of the top search histories. If it doesn't come up, I think it's safespace.org. You might have to check me on that. And we have a website that there's a tab that's like Get Involved, and then on there we have actually an application that you can fill out online. Fill out the application, submit it to SafeSpace, and then someone will reach out to you for an interview, and we'll see if you're like a sort of a right fit for our organization. And we're definitely always recruiting. So please do apply if you're interested. It's been such a huge springboard for my activism. It's really what got me started sort of on this path towards like fighting for equality for my community, fighting for mental health awareness. Like, it's just been such a huge resource. It's really helped me along. And I can say with confidence that I wouldn't have done this much work. I wouldn't have been so successful with this if I haven't had this support of SafeSpace.
Great. Thank you so much, Kai. I really appreciate you, and I appreciate what you're doing for yourself and for the community. I wish you
Thank you
fabulous.
So much for your time.
You're welcome. I wish you a fabulous Pride Month.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.